Have you ever watched someone walk away and still smiled? Not because you didn't hurt, but because you knew some doors must close before the light can come in. This is the story of Melissa Carter, the woman who saw her husband off on a rainy Seattle night without tears, without pleading, leaving behind only an envelope and a smile that silenced the world. And him, Alex Hopkins, the man who thought he was leaving to rekindle an old love, not knowing he was stepping straight into the game his gentle wife had already set in motion. A story about betrayal and consequence, about how a woman chooses silence and lets life speak for her. And sometimes, the most beautiful revenge is to rise, to live well, and let the one who hurt you see it happen. That night, Seattle was drizzling as always. Raindrops slid down the window pane, catching the soft yellow light of the small kitchen where Melissa Carter was setting the table for dinner. There was nothing special about that scene, just another Thursday evening between two people who had been married for over 7 years. On the table sat Alex's favorite, honey-roasted chicken, a glass of red wine, and buttered garlic bread. Everything was prepared with quiet care, out of habit more than intention. Still, something inside Melissa felt strange, a vague unease threading through the sound of rain. He had texted, "I'll be home in 10. She smiled, set the phone down, and poured another glass of wine. When Alex Hopkins walked in, rain dripping from his dark coat, there was something unfamiliar in his eyes, a hesitation, a decision long made. "You're right on time," she said softly, voice calm. "The chicken's getting cold." He nodded and sat across from her. The clink of silverware was the only sound between them. After a while, Alex set his knife down and exhaled. "Melissa, we need to talk." She looked up, still smiling faintly. "That line never brings good news." He paused. "Anita, she's going through a tough time. She needs me." Melissa placed her glass down, eyes steady. "She's your ex-wife, Alex. I know, but she's not okay. She lost her job, and her house is about to be foreclosed. I can't just turn away. And so, you want to leave?" He nodded, as if saying it out loud hurt. "At least for a while. She needs me, and I still feel responsible." Silence filled the room. Outside, the rain fell harder. Melissa leaned back slightly, her face calm, almost serene in the warm light. "How long?" "I don't know. Will you come back?" The question caught him. He lowered his gaze, avoiding hers. Melissa smiled, a gentle, quiet smile that unsettled him. She stood, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a small suitcase. "I helped you pack." "Melissa." "It's okay," she interrupted softly. "You don't hold on to someone who wants to go. I want you to leave in peace, without the mess." He watched as she folded his shirts, socks, and familiar cologne. No crying, no anger. Every gesture was calm, almost tender. "I'm sorry," Alex murmured. "Don't," she said. "You don't owe me an apology. Just remember, I'm not the kind of woman you can return to whenever you please." There was sorrow in her eyes, but deeper still, a finality. She took the handle when the suitcase was zipped and walked to the door. "Let's go. I'll drive you." "You don't have to," he said. "It's raining. It's Seattle. It always rains." The car moved through the gray curtain of rain. Neither spoke. Only the rhythmic whisper of the wipers and soft jazz filled the silence. Melissa's reflection in the window looked pale, calm, untouchable. When they arrived at Anita's apartment, she said, "Good luck." He hesitated, wanting to say something, but she turned away, opened the trunk, and handed him a white envelope. "This is for you. Think of it as insurance," she said. Alex frowned. "What is it?" "Something that'll help you if things don't go as you think. Keep it." Then she got back into the car and drove off. The red taillights shimmered across the wet pavement before fading around the corner. Alex stood under the awning, rain pouring harder, fingers tightening around the envelope. He didn't open it. He thought it was a trace of weakness, a final gesture from the woman he'd left behind. He was wrong, terribly wrong. That night, Melissa returned to an empty house. The scent of wine and candles still lingered. Dinner sat cold on the table. She sat down, staring at the glass he had left, unfinished, his lip print still visible. No tears. Just a slow, quiet exhale, the sound of a chapter closing. Her phone lit up. Her mother was calling. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom." "He's gone?" "Yes." "Did you cry?" "No. I don't have tears left for him." Outside, the rain drummed gently against the roof, washing away the old. Melissa stood, opened the window, and breathed in the damp night air. Inside her, the pain began to shift not into hatred, but into clarity. She picked up her phone, opened her email, and sent a short message with a few attached files. The single line read, "You should know what you're getting, Anita." Then she deleted everything, powered off her phone, and stepped onto the balcony. From there, the city shimmered through the rain, lights refracting through the falling drops. She whispered, "Let the universe do its work." Across town, Anita Reynolds opened her door and smiled at the sight of Alex standing there, soaked. "You came," she said sweetly. He nodded, carrying the suitcase inside. An hour later, Anita noticed the envelope in his hand. "What's this?" "Melissa gave it to me." "I don't know what it is." Anita smirked and opened it. Inside were copies of Alex's financial records, hidden transactions, company secrets, numbers, signatures, and a final handwritten line in blue ink. "I hope you know how to use it." A slow smile curved on Anita's lips, her eyes gleaming as if fate had gifted her this moment. Meanwhile, across the city, Melissa sat in her old kitchen, raised her glass of wine, and toasted silently, not to an ending, but to a release. She smiled, not for joy, but for beginning. The rain kept falling. Seattle stayed the same, but after that night, they would never be the same again. Seattle woke the next morning under a veil of thin fog, as if the city was keeping secrets. Melissa woke later than usual. The house was so still she could hear the faint drip from the kitchen faucet. She brewed coffee, added a spoon of sugar the way Alex used to like it, then stopped, smiled softly, poured in some milk, and drank it alone. On the counter lay a second envelope identical to the one she'd handed him, except this one held the originals. Inside were more than just numbers. It was the result of 6 quiet months of watching. Transfers Alex had made without explanation, deleted emails, forged signatures on company invoices, all gathered neatly, note by note, like a sad symphony she had come to know by heart, not because she wanted to destroy him, but because she understood, sometimes, the truth is the only punishment a proud man can't bear. She stepped onto the porch. The rain was still falling lightly. The mail carrier was making rounds across the street. Melissa slipped the envelope into her mailbox and wrote a single line on the front. To Anita Reynolds. Subject, just a friendly note. Then she returned inside, as if she'd just mailed an invitation. That afternoon, her mother came by. Mrs. Carter, silver-haired but with eyes still bright and kind, looked around the manless house. "He's really gone, isn't he?" "He is, Mom. Took the suitcase and my trust with him." Her mother sat down. "Do you hate him?" Melissa smiled. "No. I feel light." "Light?" "Like someone who's finally removed her armor after a silent war." Her mother sighed. "You were good to him till the end." "No, Mom. I just kept the last bit of courtesy between 2 strangers." Outside, the rain kept its rhythm, Seattle's endless refrain. Melissa turned on the music. "Don't Dream It's Over" played softly. The familiar voice and the sound of the wind warmed the house. When night fell, she opened her laptop and glanced at the sent email. Part of her wanted to delete it. Another part didn't see the need. Some things, once done, don't need erasing, only remembering. As milestones of awakening, she opened her small notebook and wrote, "May 14, he left. Took the past. I stayed. Kept the peace." Then she closed the book, poured more wine, and sat by the window watching the rain. Droplets streaked down the glass, catching the streetlight like fragments of fading memory. Somewhere across the city, Anita opened the envelope. In her sleek apartment, she held a glass of champagne, lips curving as she saw Alex's name on every document. "Melissa Carter," she murmured, as if savoring the name like a familiar scent. She set her glass down and turned to Jamie, lounging nearby. "Looks like this game will be more fun than we thought, Jamie." Jamie raised a brow. "He doesn't know, does he?" "No. He thinks he's saving an old love. Perfect, Jamie grinned. Then let him think so a little longer. Anita closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of early triumph. Melissa handed him to me, she whispered, and I'll use him to end this game. Outside, the rain didn't stop one city, 2 women, and 1 man standing on opposite sides of the same story. One watched in silence. The other was prepared to strike. 2 days later, Alex began moving into Anita's apartment. Everything felt foreign compared to Melissa's warm home, the heavy perfume in the living room, the cool-toned art on the walls. It didn't feel lived in, only staged. Anita greeted him with her sweet, silky voice. "Welcome home," he replied quietly. "Just for now." "Don't say that, Alex. I promise. This is only temporary. We're just helping each other through rough times." He nodded, believing in the kindness he remembered. But Anita wasn't the woman he used to know. Every glance, every gesture carried intent. That evening, while Alex sorted papers in his makeshift office, Anita appeared behind him, holding the envelope Melissa had given him. "Mind if I take a look?" "I don't even know what's in it," Alex said, uneasy. Anita smiled. "Then let me find out for you." She opened it. Within seconds, she understood everything. "Oh," she breathed. "Melissa was clever. She kept you on a tight leash, didn't she, Alex?" He frowned. "What do you mean? These transactions, if they ever got out, you'd be in real trouble." Alex snatched the papers. "Melissa would never do that, wouldn't she?" Anita arched an eyebrow. "Then why did she give this to you?" He froze. The question cut like a blade. Anita turned away, gazing out the rain-smeared window. "She's not stupid, Alex. She knows how to end things." That night, he couldn't sleep. In his mind replayed the image of Melissa at the dinner table. Her faint smile, her quiet words, "I wish you luck." They echoed now like a curse. Meanwhile, the next morning, Melissa rose early and walked around Lake Union. The wind tugged at her hair, and the scent of roasting coffee drifted from the cafe nearby. She stopped in front of Harbor Grounds, where Alex had proposed 2 years ago. The tables were the same, only she had changed. The barista recognized her and smiled. "Still an iced latte?" "The same," she said. "Haven't seen your husband in a while. He went looking for his past. And you?" "I'm learning not to look that way anymore." On her way home, Melissa stopped by a flower shop and bought a bouquet of white tulips. She placed them on her desk and stuck a small note to the vase. "Each flower will remind me. Some losses are blessings in disguise." That afternoon, a message arrived in her anonymous inbox, just 1 line. "We received the documents. They will be useful." She stared at the screen, sipped tea, and shut the laptop. She didn't need to know who would use them. Life had its own way of teaching lessons. That night, she sat on the porch, listening to rain tapping softly on the roof. The streetlight glowed against her face, no longer that of the woman left behind, but of someone who had already stepped through the storm. Across town, Alex sat in Anita's living room, staring at the empty envelope, his chest heavy. He had no idea that in this game, he'd walked right into the board his former wife had drawn. As for Melissa, she neither regretted nor rejoiced. She closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, and whispered, "It began with that letter, and it'll end somewhere else. But not with me." The rain mingled with her sigh, drifting into the night. Seattle was quiet again, as if no one had just left, but perhaps, from that day on, nothing would ever be quite the same. Anita Reynolds' apartment sat high above downtown Seattle, on the 23rd floor of a glass tower. By day, it caught the reflection of sunlight off Elliott Bay. By night, it glimmered like a bright box suspended in the gray, rainy sky. But inside, there was no warmth, only clean, cold light and the smooth perfection of a space too curated to feel lived in. Alex Hopkins entered that place like a traveler who'd lost his way. He told himself this was only a stopover, a small act of kindness for someone from the past. He didn't see that he had left a real home behind and stepped onto a stage already set. Anita greeted him with a soft smile. "You haven't changed a bit." Alex smiled faintly. "You have. I hope for the better." She turned toward the kitchen and poured him a glass of white wine. The light brushed her face, giving her skin a glow, but in her eyes shimmered something more challenging to read, a tender kind of calculation. "I heard your company's expanding," she said, as if casually. "Yeah, it's going fine. Just busy." He stopped mid-sentence. Anita pressed her lips together in a small smile. "How's Melissa?" "She's strong," he answered quietly, guilt flickering. Leaning against the counter, she let the incredible scent of Dior drift through the air. "You know, sometimes I think if I hadn't tried so hard back then, maybe we'd still be friends." "I think that too." "Well, now we have the chance, don't we?" He said nothing, partly because he didn't know how to respond, partly because her eyes unsettled him, inviting, yet testing. For the first few days, things seemed calm. Anita played the part of gratitude well. She spoke about her financial troubles and the PR projects that had fallen apart, and mentioned that Jamie, a close friend, was helping her get back on her feet. "Remember Jamie?" "No," Alex said. "Never met him. He's a good man. Sometimes he helps me more than I expect." The line sounded harmless, but the way she said his name carried a shade of something else, a tone that left Alex uneasy, like the lingering smell of smoke after rain. That night, as he reviewed Anita's files to see how he could help, he found a mess of contracts, strange transactions, and unclear transfers. He frowned, confused. Anita appeared at the door, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Working all night? Just trying to make sense of things. I know. You always like to keep everything under control." Her voice was light, but there was an edge beneath it. Alex looked up, wanting to reply, then sighed instead. She placed a glass in front of him, tilting her head slightly. "Melissa's lucky." "Lucky?" "Yes. To have a man like you who sacrifices so much for others. Not everyone would." Her tone softened, and he felt something shift inside him, a quiet craving for the kind of validation Melissa rarely gave. But somewhere deep down, a small voice whispered, "Be careful." Anita sat beside him, her hand brushing his. "How long will you stay?" "Not sure." "Then stay until everything's okay." She smiled, a trace of triumph flickering across her eyes. Alex didn't notice, but he had become her pawn from that moment. 3 weeks later, the Seattle rain still hadn't stopped. Alex's life in that apartment had settled into a strange rhythm. At first came the thank yous, then the small favors, and slowly, those small favors turned into habits. "Can you review this contract for me? Jamie says Clause 4 might be risky. Could you send this email for me? My laptop's acting up. Can you stay tonight? I'm not feeling well." Each could be a thread, and by the time he realized, those threads had woven into a net. One evening, Jamie came by. Tall, well-dressed, perfectly polite. "Alex, finally, Anita's told me so much about you. Hope it's good things." "Of course. She says you're the kindest man she's ever known." Jamie's handshake was firm, not crushing, but deliberate, like a quiet assertion of place. They spent the evening talking, Anita between them, smiling, pouring wine. When Jamie spoke, she leaned in, eyes bright. When Alex did, she merely listened, distant, a subtle shift, slight, but sharp enough for Alex to feel himself fading from the center. After dinner, Anita saw Jamie to the door. Their laughter carried down the hallway a little too long before it stopped. Alex glanced in the mirror and saw her adjusting her hair, lips still curved in that faint smile. "How close are you two?" he asked. "Jamie. Oh, we work together. I think he likes you." Anita turned, her gaze cold as glass. "Don't start, Alex. You're not my husband anymore." The words hit hard. She was right, he had no right to jealousy, no claim left to make. That night, he lay awake, staring at the bright white ceiling. In his mind, he saw Melissa again, the golden light, her quiet laugh, the smell of buttered bread. Everything here was polished, flawless, and utterly hollow. The next morning, Anita left early. On the table, she'd written a note. "Check the folder Documents. Confidential. Thanks, my hero." Alex opened her laptop and browsed the directory. Amid the files, one name caught his eye: insurance. His chest tightened. The word insurance echoed Melissa's voice from that rainy night. He opened it. Inside were the same financial documents that Melissa had once held, now branded with Jamie Smith's company logo. He froze. Melissa had possessed those papers. Now Anita had them, and Jamie was her partner. The truth began stitching itself together in his mind, piece by piece. "No, it can't be," he whispered. His phone buzzed. A text from Anita. "Don't worry. Everything's under control." But he knew the only thing out of control was him. He stepped onto the balcony, watching the rain pour down the streets below. The cold drops couldn't wash away what he'd seen, they only made the truth clearer. He had walked straight into the trap. Meanwhile, across the city, Melissa sat in a cafe by the lake, holding a cup of latte, watching the drizzle. In her eyes was something soft, not sadness, but peace, touched with melancholy. She wrote in her small notebook, "When a man believes he's saving someone, sometimes he's only burying himself." And high above the wet city, on the 23rd floor, Anita's laughter echoed light, deliberate, like the opening notes of a new game. June brought rare sunlight to Seattle. The sky was a pale blue, and the wind from the bay carried the scent of salt and roasted coffee. But in Anita Reynolds' 23rd floor apartment, light served a different purpose, not to warm, but to expose and control. She had replaced the white curtains with sheer ones, letting the room drown in a sterile brightness, as if every corner had been stripped of shadow. Alex Hopkins once thought this was where he was helping someone in need, but over time, the lines blurred. Helping became obligated, and obligated became expected. Somewhere along the way, Anita had turned him into part of the apartment, a breathing object that obeyed. That morning, she walked into the living room in a white silk robe, coffee cup in hand. "Alex, I left the budget documents on the table. Jamie says some figures are missing. Can you take a look?" He looked up. "Jamie again?" Anita raised a brow. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's just, you mention him a lot lately." "Because he helps me. He's efficient." Her voice wasn't sharp, but its chill stung. Alex picked up the papers and tried to focus, yet her gaze pressed down like a weight. "You know," Anita said softly, "Melissa's lucky. She always had you to lean on." He froze. "What are you trying to say?" "I just think, maybe you like being the savior. You like being needed." Her words landed quietly, but inside him, they struck like thunder. Anita smiled faintly and set her cup down. "See? You're here because I need you. So, what happens when I don't?" Alex turned away, staring out the window. Below, Seattle glimmered under the sun, people laughing, walking, alive. The world kept moving, and only he stood still, trapped in a gleaming, airless cage. That evening, when he suggested going out for a walk, Anita said, "No need. Stay here. Jamie's coming, we have work to discuss." "I can help." "No, you'll complicate things." Her voice sliced through the air, calm but cutting. Alex said nothing. For the first time, he realized he was no longer part of the story, just an audience. He watched the streaks of car lights below from the balcony, while Anita and Jamie's laughter echoed inside, easy, familiar, intimate, the clink of glasses, the scrape of a chair, a murmur too soft to catch, yet clear enough to wound. He gripped the railing, his hands trembling. The man reflected in the glass wasn't the same one who had once walked out on Melissa, confident, decisive, in control. This one looked hollowed, eaten away by doubt and humiliation. Later that night, Anita stepped onto the balcony, a robe draped over her shoulders and a wine glass in hand. "You're still out here? What are you doing to me?" he asked. "What are you talking about? You make me feel like I don't belong in my own space." Her lips curved. "Maybe you should get used to that." Melissa probably felt the same way for years. The words stopped him cold. She turned, voice lower now. "You think you were the one who left, but maybe she left you long before that." She closed the door behind her, leaving him alone in the chill. Below, the city glittered a sea of lights without direction. The days that followed moved like a silent storm. Alex tried to steady himself and bury his mind in work. But Anita grew sharper. She asked him to review Jamie's contracts and to sit in on meetings that made no sense to him. When he handed her a revised proposal one morning, she barely glanced at it. "You write like it's still 10 years ago. Jamie says we should use the new profit model. Yamya says, Do you have a problem with me listening to him? Her tone wasn't loud, but it was heavy with warning. Alex said nothing. Anita turned to the mirror, adding a touch of lipstick. You should learn humility. Maybe Melissa spoiled you too much. Every word from her was a precise incision. No blood, only ache. That night, Alex set the table for dinner. Anita appeared in a red dress that clung to her like flame. Going somewhere? Jamie's party. Don't wait up. I could come. No. People don't bring their exes to parties. She left, and the apartment fell silent again. Alex looked around at the designer furniture. The perfect symmetry, all of it beautiful and soulless. He opened the liquor cabinet, poured whiskey, and drank. The burn in his throat brought back the memory of Melissa, her smile, quiet laughter, the touch on his shoulder when he'd lost faith. He heard her voice again. I just want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. He laughed, a rough, broken sound. You knew all along. Near dawn, Anita returned. She reeked of champagne, her laugh slurred but sharp. Alex reached to steady her. She brushed him off. Don't touch me. You're drunk. No, just tired. Tired of looking at you like this, a man who once made people admire him, now counting someone else's breaths. Alex stood silent. You know, she said, voice slow, almost amused. Melissa was brilliant. She gave me the broken version of you. I don't need to destroy you. You're doing it yourself. She laughed once, soft and cruel, and disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Alex sank to the floor. The red lipstick mark on her glass glowed faintly under the light like blood on an old wound. The next morning, Anita was gone. On the table lay a note in her elegant handwriting. Jamie will stop by to pick up some documents. Please hand them over. Alex stared at the words, a dull ache spreading through him. It had all started with that envelope, the one labeled insurance. Now he understood. Melissa hadn't just sent him away. She had designed the path he would walk. He looked out the window and whispered, You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you, Melissa? But no answer came. Across town, Melissa Carter sat by Lake Union. Notebook open under the morning Sunday, she wrote, When a man believes he's being saved, he's often drowning. Not because I wished it, but because he never learned how to swim. The wind stirred the page. She closed the notebook gently and smiled a distant, knowing smile. Far above the shining city, in that glass apartment, Alex Hopkins sat alone, staring at the white ceiling. And for the first time he understood, even light can suffocate. July. The rain in Seattle had eased, giving way to afternoons washed in gold. Sunlight spilled across the glass towers, but inside the 23rd floor apartment, the season never changed. There was only one color left, the cold hue of pretense. Alex Hopkins had been living there for nearly 2 months. He couldn't remember the last time he truly took a deep breath. Each morning, he made coffee, opened his laptop, and listened to the click of Anita's heels echo through the apartment, a sound that now felt like the ticking of a countdown clock. Jamie Smith came by more often. He was always immaculate, always smiling with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he stood. And whenever Jamie was around, Anita seemed to glow, making Alex feel like an outdated object left in the wrong place. One afternoon, Jamie stepped into the office while Alex reviewed the financials. Got a minute, Alex? What is it? Anita said you were looking at the PR project in LA. You don't have to worry about that. I've handled it. Jamie sat down and poured himself a drink, utterly at ease as if this were his home. You should relax, he said. Anita's worried about you. You don't look so good lately. I'm fine, Alex replied flatly. Fine? Jamie chuckled. You look more like someone afraid of losing something. Alex tightened his grip on the glass. The words struck deep. I just feel sorry, he murmured. Maybe I took the wrong path. Jamie's smile widened. No, Alex. You just chose the wrong person to walk it with. The comment was casual and almost kind, but it thundered like a verdict to Alex. He looked at Jamie and saw only smug assurance reflected. That evening, Anita came home late, her coat damp, her perfume laced with the faint trace of men's smoke. You were with Jamie? He asked. Yes. He seems to be around a lot lately. Jamie helps me. You shouldn't be jealous. The words sliced cleanly, You really think I'm jealous? She turned, her smile small and sharp. If you weren't, why ask? She disappeared into the bathroom, leaving him alone in the too bright silence. Outside, the sound of distant traffic blurred into the rain. Alex wandered the apartment, the pristine furniture, the untouched books, the staged perfection. Everything gleamed, but nothing lived. On the table, a thin envelope lay half open. Inside were photocopies of the insurance documents, the duplicate files Melissa had once given him. But this time, a new line had been scrawled across the top in red ink. Property of Jamie Smith. His chest tightened. The pieces finally aligned. Anita, Jamie, Melissa. He realized this wasn't his first betrayal. He had stepped into an upgraded version of it. That night, the rain returned brutal and relentless, as if the city needed cleansing. Alex sat motionless, staring at the faint glow beneath Anita's bedroom door. A low laugh drifted out, followed by a man's voice. He didn't need to open the door to know who it was. He rose, heart pounding, and turned the knob. The door flew open. Anita startled. Jamie looked back. Calm, collected. Alex froze. The scene before him said everything words could not. For a long moment, there was only silence, the rain hammering against glass, the shattered reflection of what used to be trust. "What are you doing here?" Anita asked coolly. "I should be the one asking that. You're acting insane. And you," he rasped, "are acting like someone who's forgotten what it means to have a soul." Jamie stood, buttoning his shirt, voice steady. "Easy, Alex. Don't make a scene." "A scene?" Alex let out a low, bitter laugh. "You turned me into one." Anita crossed her arms, bored. "You know, Alex, Melissa was right. You're too predictable." He stiffened. "What did she say?" "She said I wouldn't need to break you. I'd have to let you choose. And you did exactly the way she said you would." Alex's voice cracked. "Melissa told you that?" "Oh, don't look so shocked. She sent me those documents. She wanted me to take care of you. And I did, didn't I?" Anita smiled faintly. "You thought she was kind. She's smarter and crueler than I'll ever be." The room spun. The air grew heavy. Alex felt like the floor had vanished beneath him, everything collapsing into the roar of rain. Jamie stepped forward, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Go home, Alex. Anita doesn't need you anymore." Alex shoved him away, eyes blazing. "You'll both pay for this." Anita laughed softly. "No, Alex. You're the one paying. For believing you could betray someone and still be loved." She opened a drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and tossed it onto the table. "This is the financial contract you signed for me. Your signature's right there. One phone call, and everything you have is gone." He stared at the page, then at her. The strength drained from his body. "You win," he said quietly. "No," she replied, smiling. "Melissa wins." The words struck like the final bullet. Alex turned, walked down the hall, and closed his door. The sound echoed through the corridor as he rode the elevator down, each floor sliding past like pieces of a life dissolving. A rush of cold air met him when the doors opened onto the lobby. Outside, the rain poured down. No home, no wife, no honor, just a man and his shadow. He stepped into the storm. The water soaked through his shirt, but the chill inside him deepened. He looked up at the towers glittering above homes filled with laughter, with love, with trust, things he no longer belonged to. Across the city, Melissa Carter sat beneath her porch light, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. The evening news played softly a report about a financial consulting firm under investigation. The name Alex Hopkins flickered across the screen. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She whispered, "Every game has an ending, and sometimes the winner's only move is patience." Outside, the rain fell soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, and in that stillness, Seattle turned again, as if no one had just fallen from their poisoned paradise. Autumn came early to Seattle. The wind off the bay carried a chill, the rain returned in soft threads, and the streets already quiet seemed to hold their breath. Somewhere on the city's worn edges, Alex Hopkins lived in a cheap room behind Fremont, where a flickering yellow bulb lit peeling walls, and the steady drip of a leaking pipe filled the silence. It had been 3 months since the night he'd walked out of Anita's apartment. In those 3 months, his world collapsed faster than he could understand. His company, Hopkins Strategy, was under investigation. The contracts he'd signed for Anita now traced back to him. Every deal, every signature, pointed in his direction. No one believed his explanations. Former partners withdrew, friends went silent, and when the press caught on, the headline was enough to end him. Alex Hopkins, the man who betrayed his wife and company. No one cared what was true. His accounts were frozen, his name blocked. The house he'd shared with Melissa was sold to pay tax debt. His mother called, but he couldn't bear to answer. The only message he read was one line: "I still pray for you." He survived on what little savings remained, delivering packages for a courier service. Each day, he rode through familiar streets, past the coffee shop where he once met Melissa but never stopped. Once, from across the street, he saw her, hair tied back, beige coat, stepping out of a flower shop. She smiled at the clerk, calm and radiant. He hid under his cap and watched from a distance. He thought about running up to her to apologize, to ask for one more chance. But when he saw her place the flowers in her bicycle basket and ride away, he understood. She needed nothing more from him. She had truly moved on. That night, in his small room, he scrolled through old messages. "I left your coffee on the table. Don't work too late. Do you miss me?" Each line cut deeper. He wished he could return to that rainy night to say only one thing: "I choose you." But time doesn't return anything, least of all to those who learn regret too late. One afternoon, while delivering on Capitol Hill, he overheard 2 women talking. "Did you hear? Melissa Carter is opening her own interior design studio. Good for her. After everything, she deserves peace." Her name drifted through the air like a strange note. Alex stood still in the wind, his heart tightening. She had gone forward. He was still trapped in the wreckage. That night, he wrote in his old notebook, "I once had a name, a place, someone to love. Now I'm only a shadow." And he understood he was the one who had erased that name, not anyone else. The rumors spread faster than rain. Online, Alex Hopkins became shorthand for a kind of ruin, the man who had everything and destroyed it himself. People called it the Hopkins syndrome, those who abandoned the good for the illusion of something better. At first, he raged. Then he laughed. Life was fair in its cruelty. It needed no avenger, only time. One evening, during a delivery in Queen Anne, he ran into an old colleague, David. The man froze when he saw him. "Alex?" "Yeah, it's me. I thought you left the city." "No, I'm still here. Just not where I used to be." They sat on the steps outside a cafe, whispering. David told him that she was doing well. Melissa had been offered a partnership with a significant interior design firm. "She seems to have forgiven the past," he added. Alex asked, almost whispering, "Did she ever mention me?" David hesitated, then said softly, "Only once. She said, 'He's paying for it, and I don't need to watch that happen.'" The words cut and soothed at once. Alex nodded. "Thanks." He walked home along the edge of Lake Union. The water shimmered under the city lights, carrying the faint scent of rain. In his reflection, he saw a thinner, older man, but with something new in his eyes: clarity. He realized that some losses aren't meant to be repaired. He only understood them. Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can become lessons you live with. Back in his room, he opened his old laptop and began filling out a job form. Name: Alex Hopkins. Occupation: doesn't matter. Experience: I know what it means to lose everything and still keep breathing. The next morning, he got a call for an interview at a small woodworking shop on the city's edge. The owner, an older man with kind eyes, looked over his resume. "You used to be in finance, right? Why woodworking?" Alex smiled faintly. "Because I want to make something I can actually see." The man nodded. "Then start tomorrow. We don't ask for reasons here." That night, Alex looked down at his roughened hands and felt lighter. For the first time in months, he slept soundly. In his dream, he walked past his old house. The window was lit, and inside, Melissa stood arranging flowers. She turned and glanced out. No anger, no smile, just peace. He didn't knock. He only stood from afar and whispered to himself, "I'm still here." And maybe that's what you wanted most. The wind from the bay carried the faint scent of roses. Rain began to fall soft, forgiving. And in that quiet, a man with no name finally knew where he was going. Winter crept into Seattle. It wasn't the biting cold found back east, but the wind from the bay carried a chill that sank deep beneath the skin. Around Lake Union, the houses lit up early, their reflections trembling on the water, a lonely and tender scene. That night, after his shift at the woodworking shop, Alex Hopkins sat in his car with a paper cup of cheap coffee. He meant to drive straight back to his rented room, but something, maybe memory, maybe guilt, made him turn down an old road. The road that led to the neighborhood where he and Melissa once lived. He had once known every crack in that pavement, every tree along the way. Now, each corner felt foreign, as if he were drifting through the fading dream of another life. The house at number 27 was still there, small, with its climbing roses along the porch. A warm light glowed from the kitchen window. Nothing had changed, except for the one thing that mattered most. His shadow was no longer part of the picture. Alex cut the engine and sat still. The air seeped through the car's frame, damp, cool, laced with rain and earth. Inside his chest, a dull ache stirred. It wasn't love, not quite nostalgia, more like the faint pain that lingers where a bone once broke, reminding him of what had healed wrong. He looked toward the window. Melissa was in the kitchen, hair tied up, grey sweater, her movements calm and deliberate. Light spilled across her face, soft, untroubled. She poured 2 glasses of wine. His heart clenched. A man entered the frame, tall, composed, holding a bouquet of white tulips. Melissa smiled as she took them, setting the flowers gently into a vase. That smile filled the room. It was simple, real, effortless, a smile Alex hadn't seen in years, not even when she'd still been his wife. He sat frozen, fingers tight around the steering wheel. A storm of feeling rose, jealousy, regret, sorrow, but above all, understanding. She hadn't just left him. She had outgrown the version of herself that still belonged to him. A gust of wind lifted the curtain inside, and for a brief second, Melissa turned toward the window, toward the street, where he, Saturday. Alex stopped breathing. The moment stretched thin. He couldn't tell if she saw him or not. But in that stillness, he understood. Even if she did, she wouldn't come to the door. She owed him nothing anymore. He whispered into the quiet, "You look peaceful." A cat darted across the hood of his car, startling him. When he looked back, one of the lights inside had gone out. Melissa and the man were sitting on the sofa, talking. Her laughter drifted faintly through the rain, soft, bright enough to warm an entire cold night. Alex started the car and backed away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank, the window light fading until it disappeared behind the trees. He didn't know who the man was, a friend, a partner, someone new. It didn't matter. All that mattered was the truth he could finally see. Melissa had moved on. He drove aimlessly through the city. Seattle at night was a maze of light, each street a fragment of memory. He passed Alki Beach, where he'd once taken her for picnics, and the Fremont Bridge, where she'd leaned on his shoulder watching the river glitter below. Everything remained exactly where it had been, except the person beside him. He parked by the waterfront. The tide lapped gently against the rocks, the air thick with salt and roasted coffee from a cafe somewhere down the pier. Sitting on the concrete steps, he watched the city across the bay, the scattered lights shimmering like fallen stars. And in the hum of the wind, he heard Melissa's voice, faint but unmistakable, rising from some quiet corner of memory. Forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who deserves peace. He hadn't understood it then. Now, he understood perfectly. Alex pulled an old photograph from his jacket, one from their 3rd year of marriage, taken in Portland. They were smiling, her arm looped around his shoulders, her hair caught in the wind. The edges were worn, the color faded. He looked at it for a long time, then folded it gently and let it fall into the water. The photo drifted, spun once, and sank. "Goodbye, Mel," he whispered. A raindrop hit his cheek, then another. Soon, the drizzle turned into a soft shower. He didn't move. He tilted his face upward, letting the rain wash over him. The water was cold, but it felt like cleansing. Later that night, back in his small room, Alex didn't sleep. Instead, he wrote, "Not apologies this time, but a plan. Tomorrow, I'll submit my full-time application to the shop. I want to build things again from nothing. Not to be forgiven, but to stop hating myself." The next morning, he arrived early at the workshop. He wiped down the tools and adjusted the wood panels one by one. The old owner glanced at him. "You look different, kid. Eyes are clearer." Alex smiled, his voice low but steady. "Maybe I saw a ghost." "A ghost? Yeah. Outside her window. But it didn't scare me. It reminded me I'm still alive." The man chuckled. "Good. Keep working. Time knows how to heal what we don't." The sun broke through the clouds that afternoon, spilling light into the workshop. Alex looked at his hands, rough, dusted with sawdust, and, for the first time, they felt like proof. Proof that he had started over, even late. And across the city, in the warm light of a small house, Melissa stood by her window, watching the rain glisten outside. She saw nothing but droplets catching the light, yet a calm spread through her chest. Deep down, she knew, someone out there had finally learned to let go, and with that, every lost soul hers. His found its peace. February wrapped Seattle in its grayest season. The rain no longer fell hard, it drifted down like an endless curtain of mist. Streets blurred into one another, and in that muted cold, Alex Hopkins felt something strange for the first time. He was no longer afraid of being alone. His small rented room had grown unusually tidy. On the table sat half-carved pieces of wood, a few old books on psychology and philosophy, and a wall calendar each day marked, one by one. He no longer counted what he'd lost. Now he counted what remained. Honest work, hands that still had strength, and a sense of dignity being slowly, carefully stitched back together. In the mornings, he worked at the carpentry shop. In the evenings, he volunteered at the community center, teaching a free repair class for older people. Old Mason, his boss, laughed when Alex signed up. "I thought you came here to learn, not to teach." Alex smiled. "I figured, maybe it's time to give something, instead of always asking to get back." It was the truest thing he'd said in years. At the center, people called him Mr. A. None knew he'd once been a financial strategist, owned a lakeside home, or had a wife named Melissa. They only knew him as the quiet man who fixed chairs, mended locks, and listened when they spoke about lives long gone. Sometimes, under the dim yellow light of the hall, he thought of her not as a wound, but as a gentle reminder. "If one day you see me doing something right," he whispered to the thought of her, "I hope you smile." He knew she wouldn't come back, but he wanted to become someone she wouldn't have to turn away from. One late March afternoon, as Alex framed a piece of wood, a knock came at the workshop door. He looked up and froze. Melissa. She stood in a long beige coat, hair loose, face calm but eyes deep. In her hands, a small box. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, voice soft enough to still the air. Alex wiped his hands quickly, heart racing. "Of course. Come in." They sat at the rough wooden table where he usually shared coffee with Mason. She opened the box. Inside was a wooden picture frame, the one he had made for her 5 years ago, now chipped and cracked. "I found it in my storage room," she said. "I was going to throw it out, but thought maybe you could fix it." He picked it up, fingertips trembling. "Sure, but why not just toss it? It's not worth keeping." "Because even broken, it once held something good," she said. "Throwing it away would erase that. Fixing it means accepting it once broken." He looked at her, throat tight. "Melissa, no more apologies." Her voice was gentle, but certain. "You've said them already, and I believe you understand." Silence settled between them, filled by the soft patter of rain on the tin roof. Finally, Melissa spoke again. "I heard you're working here, that you're helping people, that you've changed." He lowered his head. "I'm just trying to do something decent, even if it's late." "No one times decency, Alex," she said, smiling faintly. "What matters is that it's real." Her words weren't forgiveness, but neither were they judgment. They felt like a slightly open door, enough for air. She stood. "When it's fixed, you can keep the frame." Consider it my gift, a piece of memory that's expired. She turned to go, but paused at the door. I don't hate you anymore, Alex. Love. I don't know. Maybe one day when I see you smile without guilt behind your eyes, I'll know. The door closed softly behind her. Alex stood motionless. Outside, the rain still fell, but for the first time, warmth bloomed quietly in his chest. Not because she'd said she loved him, but because she didn't hate him. And sometimes, between two souls that once broke each other, that's a miracle enough. That night, he worked on the broken frame in the shop. Each strike of the chisel, each stroke of sandpaper, felt like an act of confession. He carved 4 small words along the inner edge, words only he would know were there. Forgive by living. When he was done, he didn't paint it. He left it bare, let the cracks show, proof that beauty didn't always require perfection. He placed the frame on the table and stared at it until tears blurred his vision. Outside, dawn crept over the horizon. The first light filtered through the window, brushing across the table, his rough hands, and the resurrected frame, a piece of wood reborn from ash. Alex smiled. For the first time, it wasn't a smile of pain. Thank you, Melissa, he whispered. Not for coming back, but for showing me what living really means. A sparrow landed on the roof, sang a few short notes, and took off again. Alex watched it go, understanding at last. Proper redemption doesn't need an audience. It only needs a heart willing to stay quiet and keep building. May in Seattle felt like a rebirth. The air was soft, the sky bright, and the trees along Lake Union glowed new green. The city seemed gentler somehow, and in that warmth, Alex felt a small but particular faith that he could keep walking forward without his past dragging him back. He still worked at the shop, but now he wasn't just a craftsman. Old Mason trusted him to lead a small team. You've got a way of making people do honest work, the old man said. Alex smiled. He knew Mason wasn't talking about skill, he was talking about the light in Alex's eyes, found only in those who have fallen and learned to climb again. One morning, a voice called out behind him as he was loading timber into the truck. Alex? He froze, turned. Melissa. She stood at the entrance in a white linen dress, blueprints in hand, sunlight glinting off her hair. Hi, he managed. I came to meet Mr. Mason, she said, smiling softly, but they told me he's out. I figured you'd be here. She laid the blueprints on the table. My studio just got a new project, a lakeside home. I need someone to do the window frames and interior woodwork. And she looked him straight in the eye. I trust you more than anyone. You want to work with me? He asked, stunned. Why not? Your past doesn't make your hands any less skilled. If anything, it's made them steadier. He gave a faint, nervous laugh. I don't know what to say. Then don't, she said lightly. Just do the work. And so, they worked together. In the following weeks, Melissa often visited the shop bringing coffee, sketches, and that faint trace of perfume he remembered. At first, their conversations were brief, focused on the project. But slowly, the walls softened. You still measure to the millimeter, she said one afternoon, watching him adjust a frame. It's the one thing I never did carelessly. And the thing you did most carelessly? Love. The air stilled for a beat. Melissa looked away, then said quietly, At least now you can name it. Her words stayed with him all day. As she packed up that evening, he asked, Do you ever regret any of it, everything that happened? She smiled gently. No. Because without it, I wouldn't have learned to love myself first. And I, he said, learned how to endure myself. She met his eyes. No, Alex. You're not someone to pity anymore. You're someone who's standing. The project moved fast. 3 weeks later, the lakeside house was nearly finished. On the last day, Melissa brought an apple pie. Take a break. Eat with me, she said, easy and familiar. They sat on the porch steps, watching the lake shimmer under a violet sky. Remember this kind of house? Alex asked. 5 years ago, I said I wanted one like it. I remember, she smiled. You said you wanted a bright kitchen for me to keep flowers in. Yeah. But back then, I didn't know light couldn't save someone who had already gone dark inside. She rested her hand on the wooden step. You've come farther than where you fell, Alex. I see that. He looked at the lake. but not far enough to forget what I did to you." "Why forget?" she asked softly. He blinked. "What? You don't need to forget, Alex. Real change is when you can look back without hating who you were." Her words fell like gentle rain. They sat quietly, the air filled with the scent of wet grass and fresh-cut wood. No blame was left between them, only the peace when both finally stopped fighting the past. "I used to think I wanted you to suffer," Melissa said, barely above the wind. "But when you did, I just felt empty. I realized I didn't want you hurt, I wanted you to understand." "I do now," he said, late but real. "That's enough," she whispered. They didn't speak again. They didn't need to. When she finally rose to leave, Alex called softly, "Melissa." She turned. "Yes? If you ever let me, I want to call you home again, not as my ex-wife, but as someone I've learned how to love properly." She paused. The sunset reflected in her eyes, glimmering like the lake below. "Keep walking, Alex," she said gently. "If it's real, the road will lead you there." She walked away, her figure dissolving into the golden light. A gust of wind scattered a few sheets of paper from the porch. Alex bent to pick them up. On one, in Melissa's handwriting, a small note in the corner read, "Every broken thing deserves a chance to be rebuilt." He smiled. He didn't know if she'd written it for the house or for them. But either way, it was enough, because now, for the first time, he believed it. If walked long enough, the road of redemption always finds its way back to light. Summer returned to Seattle with its golden mornings, sunlight pouring through tree-lined streets, and the scent of coffee drifting from cafes around Lake Union. Along the familiar road of their past, Melissa Carter strolled, a latte in hand, smiling faintly as she saw the new sign. Hopkins and Mason Woodworks. His name, but this time, not tied to failure, only to renewal. Inside, the hum of saws blended with the sound of old country music. Alex Hopkins stood bent over a door frame, sleeves rolled up, shoulders streaked with sweat. His face had darkened under the sun. His eyes, once restless, were now steady, not the gaze of a man who'd fallen, but of one who'd learned the weight of every chisel stroke and piece of wood. Melissa watched for a moment, then knocked. "It's open," he called, voice deep, warm, achingly familiar. When he looked up and saw her, his smile faltered for just a heartbeat surprise, then quiet relief. "You came." "I did. I thought you'd just send an email. Some stories don't deserve to end that way." She stepped inside. The shop was clean, bright, and orderly. The picture frame she had once brought him hung on the wall, the same one he'd repaired, still unpainted, its wood bare and honest. "You really kept it." "I kept it to remember. Not the mistakes, but that something once broken can be mended with your own hands." Melissa smiled softly, walking closer. "I came to tell you the lakeside house is finished, and I want you there for the opening. Are you sure you're not worried about what people might say, working with the man who once betrayed you?" "I'm not working with a man who betrayed me," she said, meeting his eyes. "I'm working with someone who finally learned how to live right." Her voice was calm, but to Alex it felt like wind passing through a long locked door, opening it at last. Silence stretched only the slow spin of the ceiling fan between them. "Melissa," he began carefully, "I don't know if I have the right to ask this, but do you ever think we could start again?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she strolled around the shop, fingers trailing across smooth wood, until she stopped by the window where sunlight streamed in. "You know something, Alex," she said quietly. "Forgiveness doesn't always mean return, and coming back doesn't always mean loving the same way." He lowered his head, his chest tightened. "But sometimes," she went on, her voice gentler, "when two people have changed enough, love changes too. It stops being an obsession. It becomes a choice." She turned toward him, eyes steady, kind. "If I ever come back, it won't be because you asked. It'll be because I want to. Because I see a man who's earned not a second love, but a second life." For the first time in years, Alex didn't hide behind guilt. His eyes met hers open, unguarded, utterly sincere. "I'm not asking you to love me again," he said softly. "I just want to walk beside you, to be someone you can trust even once more." Melissa stepped closer, close enough for him to feel her breath. "I used to trust you," she whispered, "and you broke it. But now, I see something different. Not in your words, in your eyes." She touched her hand lightly to his chest, then withdrew it with a small smile. People don't need to beg for forgiveness when they've truly changed. Forgiveness happens naturally then. The day of the opening came bathed in gold. The lakeside house shimmered under the afternoon sun, filled with laughter, music, and the scent of new wood. Every window and frame bore Alex's mark, smooth, strong, reflecting the calm glow of the setting sun on the lake. Melissa moved among the guests, radiant and gracious. Yet, every so often her eyes searched for him, the man standing quietly at the edge of the porch, adjusting a flower pot, not seeking notice, not demanding to be seen. She stepped outside when the crowd finally thinned and the light turned amber. "You're still working?" she asked. "I feel better when I'm working," he smiled. "Maybe because it's the one thing I've ever done without guilt." They both turned toward the lake. The air was soft, touched by the songs of the last birds of the day. "I remember what you once said," Melissa murmured, "that if you could return, you'd learn how to love right. Have you learned?" Alex looked out over the water. "I think so. Loving right isn't holding on too tightly. It's knowing when to let go and when to stay quiet so that the other person can have peace." Melissa studied him for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Then maybe," she said, "it's time I stopped keeping my distance." She stepped closer. No hand reached out, no promises were spoken. They stood side by side, watching the sky's reflection blaze across the lake, burning away the remnants of their darker years. "Alex," she said softly, "yeah? You don't get to hurt me again, I know. I've lost enough to understand." She nodded, eyes still on the horizon. Then, "Welcome back." The words weren't loud, but they rang like a bell of grace in Alex's heart. He looked at her, at the quiet light in her eyes. It wasn't the light of old love, but the glow of renewed trust. And sometimes, that is the rarer gift. They stood together until nightfall. When Melissa went inside, she left him on the porch, the lake breathing softly before him. The air carried the scent of wood, flowers, and peace. He looked up at the darkening sky and whispered, "Thank you, my queen, not for forgiving me, but for teaching me how to live in a way that deserves forgiveness." Inside, Melissa glanced once more through the window. He was still there, no longer the shadow of a man who'd left her, but one who now stood steady, beside her, not ahead or behind. She smiled quietly and turned off the porch light. The last glow of dusk faded over the lake, but within both of them, another light had just begun to burn. A light that belonged not to the past, but to those brave enough to start again after losing everything.